So, across Canada, if you're watching this, you're probably in a place where there are severe lockdown restrictions. And this is a year after the pandemic was declared in Canada. Many parts of the world, including the United States and the United Kingdom, actually have permanent reopening plans. I saw this morning that Disneyland was planning to reopen in the United States, but we're sitting in lockdown. And a large part of that is due to the Trudeau Liberal government's failures. I'm joined today by two of who I consider very close best friends and good colleagues, Chris D'Entremont and John Barlow. Chris is a member of Parliament from Atlantic Canada, from Nova Scotia, and John, of course, you'll know as a member of Parliament from Alberta. But they both sit with me in the Health Committee. So they've been working really hard to get answers from the Liberal government on issues like vaccine procurement, rapid tests, what went wrong with the CanSino deal, and essentially why Canada is so far behind the rest of the world in addressing the pandemic. Now, I've got them here today on this feed because something crazy happened. So I typically do all the talking. Chris, do you want to explain to people what happened this week and just how bad it was?
Well, a week ago, we have to go back to the original order, was that we asked the chair of the Health Committee to call in a special committee where we would have some folks come in, the Minister of Health, the Minister of Procurement, some experts from NACI and others, so we could ask some questions about vaccine rollout. Because, I mean, that's what we're hearing the most part. Even here in Atlantic Canada, even in Nova Scotia, where they're only having 5 or 6 cases of COVID-19 per day, we're still only vaccinating people 70 plus at this point. The rollout or the vaccines coming to us are very low. And it's really hard to figure and to understand how that rollout is working. So we want to ask those questions. And tick, 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 we're supposed to have a special meeting on Wednesday. And at the last minute, it was called off because somebody was too busy to come to the Health Committee.
Now, and I think it's important to note this emergency meeting that we called. So we called an emergency meeting. We got this motion passed to get the Liberal health ministers, senior public officials to committee to answer questions on, for example, the conflicting advice on the AstraZeneca vaccine that happened last week. They didn't even bother to schedule the meeting. The meeting was supposed to happen on Wednesday. This is a formal parliamentary motion, and the chair didn't even bother to schedule the meeting. Now, John, it was actually your team that caught where these people are going to be this week, and it's not at our health committee meeting.
No, it's incredibly disrespectful to parliamentary procedure, but also parliamentary tradition when you have a unanimous supported motion to have the ministers appear at committee, and they say they could not find time in their schedule. However, we see that they had no problem finding time in their schedule to speak at the Liberal convention this weekend. So they have time to talk about Liberal election preparedness, but no time to talk to parliamentarians and Canadians, for that matter, and explain exactly what is going on with vaccine procurement and distribution, and why many Canadians are going to have to wait 4 months between getting their first jab and their second, which is we're the only country in the world that is doing that and going off-label on these vaccines.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember last week talking to you guys, watching senior officials from Health Canada, from the Public Health Agency of Canada, essentially being on 2 different national networks at the same time, giving conflicting advice on the AstraZeneca vaccine. And, in coordination with you and actually with other opposition parties, with the Bloc and the NDP, we moved a motion specifically to get answers on that. And at this point in time, I think by them not even calling this meeting and completely disregarding this, the question has to be asked, what do they have to hide? So I don't know if one of you guys want to get in on that. It's like, John, I know that we've tried to get the vaccine contracts many times and they just have blown this off, right?
Yeah, and there may be some critics of what we're trying to do, saying, "Well, why are you dipping back into the past? We need to look to the future." Well, you're darn rights we do, and we need to understand what the future looks like in terms of our ability to access those vaccines and distribute them to the provinces and then to Canadians who desperately need them. We have to get off this hamster wheel of lockdown, no lockdown, lockdown, stops and starts. The mental health and the fatigue that this is impacting Canadians is devastating. So those contracts will show us what is the delivery process? What are the consequences if those pharmaceutical companies do not meet their commitments? What are their commitments? What are the commitments that Canada signed compared to other countries? And obviously, from what we're seeing, where you have a United Kingdom that has very strong delivery dates and consequences if the companies don't meet those delivery dates, where obviously in Canada we have almost nothing, where we say, oh, we're going to have 8 million doses by the end of March. Well, we're a week, 10 days into April, still haven't seen them. What are the consequences and what does this mean for the future in terms of us being able to access vaccines?
Absolutely. And I mean, it's not just vaccine questions that we had, even though we had so many questions about vaccines to ask as you just went through it. I mean, today, I was reading in the newspapers that Canada is facing critical shortages of a certain type of therapeutic, for example. How did that happen? What are we doing with that? I mean, Chris, you were actually a health minister of a provincial government for a while. Like, do you find it odd that in the middle of the pandemic, the health minister would just blow off the health committee? Like, what do you think would have happened to you if you had done that?
No, I mean, we would never heard of the end of it. Is the funny part? Ultimately, you work with all the provinces, and you try to provide some kind of, like, the federal government should be providing some kind of coordination between those provinces. So at least we see some kind of equality between what's going on. But there is no equality amongst provinces right now. You see what's going on in Quebec. You see what's going on in Ontario. What's going on in the East. There's no sense of how things are rolling out. And quite honestly, when you look at what's happening in Ontario right now and Quebec, I mean, if you're looking at 28-day complete lockdowns, rather than, we all get our little announcements on our cell phones. But I mean, I don't know. Today, I think people in Ontario got like 3 different reminders to stay home. That's not how we should be working our way out of these kinds of lockdowns or dealing with COVID-19. We just need to compare ourselves to Britain or even the US. I mean, what's going on in the US, as much as they had challenges in the beginning, they seem to be having things figured out now. And we're going to pay for them getting up and running and us not being ready yet.
Yeah, no, I want to emphasize the amount of work that our team has done on getting a path out of lockdowns and permanently ending lockdowns. And you two have had an enormous role to play in that. It was our team, the Conservative Party, we tabled a motion in the House of Commons, I think it's like 2-3 weeks ago now, calling on the federal government to provide a plan that would support the permanent end of lockdowns, because we recognize that we can't keep going on this way, that there needs to be a better way. And yet, the Liberals mocked us for this. At the same time, I don't know if you're hearing from your constituents the same way that I am. Like, some people are raising, okay, well, we saw that Disneyland is reopening today, or that there's a baseball stadium reopening in Texas. Like, this is for my community anyways, like, the impact is, suicide rates are up, domestic violence rates are up, businesses are closing. Like, I know that there's restaurants in my riding that are just not going to reopen after this lockdown. Like when I think about the level of disrespect showed by not even scheduling this meeting to get answers, it's really disrespecting our constituents. And I'm just wondering, like, John, like what are you hearing in Alberta? Chris really talked about, Atlantic Canada, Ontario, Quebec. Like, I know, like, maybe you want to speak for Alberta today, because I know it's a bad situation here too.
Yeah, the fatigue amongst people is incredible, and you just see the anxiety and the stress in their eyes when you pass them on the street or in the grocery store. And when you see the statistics, we're not just talking about a couple of people here and there, but we're a G7 country, and we're not even in the top 40 in terms of countries that are at vaccination rates. And our constituents see that, and they see, exactly a full stadium at the Texas Rangers home opener, or the United States now saying, "Hey, we're ready to start opening the border, but why isn't Canada ready?" All of these things are having, a profound negative impact on not only our financial health, but certainly our mental health. And you know what, Michelle, the thing I hear most now from my constituents, and we had almost 300 people on a Zoom meeting last night with Dr. Jody Carrington, who is a child psychologist, talking about the mental health issues and COVID, is the impact this is having on our youth, especially I'm hearing from moms who are so worried about their kids and the impact this is having on them. And even when we're vaccinated, this is going to be something we are going to be paying for years to come. The mental health impact of COVID and these continual lockdowns, that we don't have to be locked down. If the Liberals would have done their job in the beginning, this is something that we're going to have to pay for a long time.
And that's really why they're not showing up to these meetings. They don't want to be held to account. The problem is, if they don't show up to these meetings, we won't have a path forward. And I think, even if somebody who's watching this is a Liberal voter, they should be holding these people to account. It's their job. Like, think about this. The chair of a parliamentary committee didn't even bother to schedule a meeting that the committee had ordered. Senior public servants didn't show up essentially to a committee summons in the middle of a pandemic. And I just wanted people on the page to know this and to share this video, because we deserve better. We deserve a path out, and we shouldn't just be subjected to continued lockdown. So I wanted to introduce people on my page to both of you. You've been working so hard at the Health Committee with me and with others. And at this point, I really do think that the Liberals have something to hide, because every time we get close to asking questions and finding answers, something like this happens. And what it's costing is, it's costing lives and jobs. So, any quick closing thoughts, you guys?
Well, I mean, ultimately, they didn't want the bad news before their convention on the weekend, because we know had we asked the right questions to these people, they probably would have had a very bad day yesterday. They would be dealing with it today. So by avoiding it completely, it doesn't come before the national media, before their convention. So it's unfortunate, but we need a plan forward. What is the plan forward? It's got to be more than just the vaccines. It's how each province is going to be aided to be able to get back to normal, whatever that normal might be. It's testing, it's vaccines, it's a whole bunch of things. They don't have that plan. Just right now, they're thinking of vaccines. It's actually scary what they haven't planned for.
Absolutely. And John?
Yeah, I would just say, you know what, Canadians deserve better. One of the primary roles of a federal government is protecting its citizens. How many lives are going to be lost over the next weeks and months because of this government's complete incompetence and failure to access and distribute vaccines? It is that simple. And it is not just those who are going to be losing their lives to COVID, and certainly this has been devastating for many in our communities, but this is, as you said, Michelle, this is suicides, opioid overdoses. These are very real, and the statistics are stunning and getting worse. And unfortunately, this falls solely at the feet of the Liberal government, who has mishandled this from the very beginning and has tried to avoid tough questions and not answer to Canadians. And I think it's that simple.
Absolutely. And, I'll just close by saying this. These restrictions were always they should have been temporary, because they're pretty extreme measures on Canadians, and Canadians are being asked to sacrifice a lot, and we deserve better, and enough is enough. So, I'm so furious that they completely just blew off democratic process. They didn't even bother to schedule this meeting. And I'm sure that, we have some things up our sleeves to hold them to account on this. And anybody watching this page can stay tuned. So please, if you're watching this, share this video. I also ask you to follow my colleagues, John Barlow and Chris D'Entremont, on their Facebook pages. They're especially, like John has got a really good perspective from rural Alberta, and Chris from Atlantic Canada. So if you're looking for the perspective from other parts of the country, they're putting out a lot of good information too. We're going to get back to holding the Liberal government to account. We've got some stuff to plan to make them pay for this disregard of democracy. But please share this video, and we'll keep working hard for you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.